Hello from my FlareBlitzed and welcome back to Katawa Shoujo, part 33, continuing with Lily's route of the game. Submerged deep in hot water, I let a drawn-out sigh escape my lips. The feeling of seemingly every muscle in my body relaxing is erotic. I have no idea how long it's been since I had a genuine hot bath, but right now I can hardly be bothered trying to remember. Probably pre-hospital, probably. Maybe I'm giving the simple fact that for once I get to have a real bath more credit than it's due. The chance to just calm down, allow myself to unwind and have some time to myself is a welcome one. Hanako, Lily and I wander about outside, exploring the extent of a surprisingly large tract of land surrounding the house. Then we spend the majority of the afternoon resting, watching television, reading and playing cards. It may not be the most exciting finale to the trip, but such tranquil peacefulness is something to savour. Even after we return to the school tomorrow, I think I remember this little house in Hokkaido for a long time. It's a pity we only have a couple more hours to spend here before going to get the train back. All I can do is yawn contentedly while I watch the steam slowly rise from the clear water's placid surface, my eyes eventually locking on to the ceiling. White again. Our exams are imminent. I've barely studied at all of them. On top of that, I don't even know what I'll do after the graduation party exams. It's all well and good, but to end? To what end? Also now, of all times, I'm getting into a relationship. What the hell am I doing? I guess I shouldn't think like that. What's done is done, and maybe this could be viewed as just another aspect of my new life that I'm working on. I enjoy being with Lily, and there's more to life than school and a career after all. As I busily attempt to rationalize all that's happened, I hear a series of raps on the door. I pick myself up and sit upright, trying to figure out the source. 3, no more and no less. Light yet assertive in their tapping, and timed regularly enough to tune a metronome. I'd be especially surprised if it wasn't Lily. May I come in? Yes, Lily. I'm still in the bath, I'll be out in a sec. I know. The voice coming from the other side of the door freezes me. After a second's thought, I rest on the side of the bath and let my arms dangle over the side. Despite trying my best to play it off, I can't help letting my mind wander. Sure, come in. Hi there. With that, she opens the door slowly, walking into the room and closing it behind her. She looks oddly calm, countering my racing heart. Hey, Lily? Do you mind if I take a bath with you? I don't mind, go ahead. With a small nod, she begins. I sense some sensory in the nearby future. Lift the sweater off her shoulders, bearing her little by little. I could do that for you if you like. Refused. Why? Her face shows she's still not overly comfortable with letting me attend to her. I can't say I blame her. She continues undressing, her shirt and skirt falling to the floor and leaving her in her white lace brown panties, but eventually she stands bare in the center of the room. Okay. Squash together. Nighttime. After a chaotic dash to the station and finding our seats in the otherwise deserted carriage, we promptly crashed. Looking at the time close to midnight, it's little surprise that few take this particular train. Hanako is fast asleep on Lily's shoulder, and I can only muster the energy to stay awake. The excitement I had a while ago probably didn't help. I would be pretty depressed about going back to school if my brain was actually working. As it is, though, the sight of the nighttime scenery scrolling by is surprisingly beautiful. My loud yawn is nearly wholly drowned out by the clacking of the train tracks and the old carriages rattling. So tired. And whose fault is that, Hisao? She really does tiptoe the line between insulting and amusing sometimes. Though I managed to rain out a weary smile, absolutely nobody's. I look back out the window, my reflection just visible on a clear plain. So truth be told, she's perfectly correct. If it weren't for that little interlude a few hours ago, both of us would have a lot more energy. On top of that, we both had to take another... I wonder why. Very nearly making us late for the train's departure. For goodness sakes, you two. You're both bad influences for one another. Yeah, it was mine. Still, getting into a bath with a guy is a dangerous thing to do. evidently. Sorry, I guess I kind of took advantage of the situation back there. Well, I didn't exactly hate it. I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure you didn't, lady. As she trails off, I look back at her. Her eyes narrow and I see slightly reddened cheeks and small grin, her mind obviously elsewhere. Say it. I knew the possibility of it happening. Was there? I knew it. You're just as dirty-minded as I am. She quickly coughs into her free hand, making her disapproval crystal clear. That's a rather crude way of putting it. The pout again. Oh, and you would suggest? I merely have a healthy one of those adult sense. So in other words, almost seems a sense of moment Hanako mumbles quietly as she furrows her brow in Lily's lap. Lily's look of disapproval melts away as she gently smiles and strokes her hand on Hanako's long dark hair. All I can do is watch and smile. If someone to ask me when I fell in love with her, I wouldn't be able to answer. The best I'd be able to come up with is, it just happened at some point, but I didn't realise it. If someone to ask me why I love her though, then I could answer much more easily. Yep, it's why rather than when. You really love Hanako, don't you? She gives a deep nod, smiling warmly. It's a pity we have to return to school. She seems to relax so much while we were all away. Talk about Hanako? I wouldn't worry. Hanako's been gaining confidence thanks to you, at least for as long as I've known you two. She gives a self-deprecating sigh. I think I merely provided her with company and support. Since she came to know you, she's opened up much more, even to me. I get a feeling she's understating her influence on Hanako, especially given that before the two came to know each other, Hanako had no friends to speak of. The friends I had in my school fulfilled what I had expected of them, for the most part simply being there to idle chatter, but in Hanako and Lilly there really means to be more to their relationship. Feels. Our part of me envies it, but another cannot ignore the fact that the school year will eventually end. After graduation, I already have an idea what Hanako would do. This trip has just shown me how much we've all come to depend on one another. Indeed, we're all going to have to make decisions. Maybe that's the reason why, despite our return to school, also heralding a return to the normality of everyday life, I can't feel a little restless. On the bright side, it won't take long for the summer holidays to arrive after our exams are finished. We could come back here during the summer holidays if you want. For a moment she thinks on the notion, her face becomes somewhat distant. I can only guess she's reflecting on all that's happened here. That would be good, I think. I nod approvingly, smiling at her. Summer, together with Lily. This idea seems like the perfect way to spend our holiday. What about Hanako, though? Future. This has to be Act 4. Yep, Act 4, and it's gonna be... Future. Act 2. Past. Act 3. Present. Act 4. Future. It just seems like a pattern going on here. After the excitement of our trip to Hokkaido, I don't know how to pronounce that properly, it seems strange to be right back to the usual daily routine so soon. Indeed, it feels like a normal day, the same as any other. Well, that's what I'd like to think anyway. To tell the truth, the atmosphere of the entire class... No, the entire school has changed. What an undercurrent of subdued trepidation has previously pervaded the class. Now that the exams are in sight, it's boiled over into frantic studying, rarely seem otherwise. One day until exams start, it's horrific. Really, that instead of studying, we went and wasted our time up north. We were such model students too. You know what, Mo, though? You could do the studying now. Hello, Misha. Glance around the class. Even the bubbly, ever-energetic Misha seems oddly deflated. For goodness sake, that's an impossibility. Misha seems deflated. She sits at her desk, nervously chewing a pen while Mito lectures from the front of the class. Wait. On closer inspection, I do believe she's eating it. Turn my eyes from the sorry spectacle. I turn my attention elsewhere. Hanako? Why do I think of that? Hanaka sits frantically scribbling her notebook, her face mere inches away from the page, seemingly trying to record every word that leaves Muto's mouth. And you two, Shizney is, well, Shizney. Cool as a cucumber, she sits diligently taking notes, with her attention wholly focused on the front of her class. Truth be told, it's what I should be doing as well, if not for the fact that I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what's been covered already. I wonder how Lily's doing. While she does have a good head on her, she has plenty on her plate, unlike me. Her class representative duties, taking care of Hanako, her other social contacts, her extra English studies. That girl really does take it on a lot. She indeed does. The lunchtime bell rings, bell brings a sigh of relief for the entire class, Muto being no exception. I get a feeling he much prefers the more laid-back atmosphere of his normal classes to the frantic pace of exam preparation we're subjected to right now. Hi, Chan? Hello, Misha. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, my only hope. I lower my eyelids to half-mast, making clear my intention of doing quite the opposite. Help me, help me, help me. Not going well? Shai-chan's gonna be fine, but I think I might die. Am I going to die, Hai-chan? Will you let me die from all this work? How mundane. Given that she's neither the brightest in the class nor the most diligent, it isn't a great surprise she's finding it hard to cope with the workload. Sorry, Misha, but I've got my own work to do. I thought you and Shizney would be studying together over the long weekend anyway. Studying's too boring to waste a holiday on, Hai-chan. Shopping together was much more fun, wasn't it, Shai-chan? It's only now that I realise Sai-chan's been looking over to us and that Misha's arms have been moving likely all this time. I must be really zoned out to not have noticed. What is it with girls and shopping anyway? Okay, what is it with boys and their pickup trucks and assault rifles? Even Lily and Hanako have dragged me... Wait, Lily and Hanako? Oh, dragged me out with them a couple of times. But you went away. It's so rare to see a guy like that likes going shopping. Well, my role would probably be best described as pack mule. I can't say I share your enthusiasm about the experience. Back to the exams. You studied after you got back from the days off, didn't you, Shizney? Of course, Hai-chan. It's only sensible to study in the days before, which also includes the goddamn holidays. Misha makes her sound vaguely similar to a dying What? As she realizes her folly and unceremoniously flops onto her desk, betrayed even by her best friend. Judging from Shizney's quite frustrated look at Misha, she probably told her to study as she did. Don't worry, you can still gain some grades if you start studying now. Remember, it's not over until a fat lady sings. Maybe. Yeah. Misha does not seem overly amused. It seems the bubbly balloon of everlasting cheerfulness has been cruelly popped, or cruelly deflated. And Shizney's sighing goes unnoticed by the mopey Misha, earning her a quick poke in the shoulder. It takes barely a moment for Misha to get back into form. Oh, so what did you do over the weekend, Hai-chan? Just took a trip up north with Lily and Hanako. It was pretty nice. I see both of them narrowing their eyes at me, their minds surely in the gutter. The fact that their suspicions are founded makes the situation all the more awkward. Yep, mine's in the gutter. We just studied and went sightseeing. There's nothing more to it. Nothing in the gutter that you two are thinking. After such a flagrant lie, I realise it may not be the best step considering Shizney's connections and her total lack of restraint when it comes to questioning someone she suspects of telling untruths. I really have no idea of how she's going to take it, but she'll find out eventually anyway. It isn't as if it's really her business whom I date in any case. And yes, Lily and I are going out now. While Misha receives the news with an enthusiastic smile, Shizney gives a look of mild surprise, somewhat masked by her cool demeanour. Whoever you date is your business. I hope you two go well together. Yes, we are what they call compatible. Our chemistry is compatible. Misha gives a look that says this is the most quarter I could possibly receive on the matter. It's all I wanted, really. After she says this, though, Shizney begins to sigh something else and stops herself and shakes her head at Misha to prevent her from translating. Normally I think this strange enough, but the awkwardly casual wave Shizney gives before walking off with Misha in tow adds to my confusion. Shizney's hardly the kind of person to pull a punch or communicate without forethought. I really struggled with that word there. I shrugged my shoulders at the duo's odd behaviour and looked towards Hanako's desk, but see that her chair's empty. She was definitely here before, so I guess she just didn't feel like waiting. I'll go grab some food alone then. Walking down the hallway to the unused room has become a second home to the three students in particular. I mournfully looked down at a plastic wrapped salad roll and juice in my hand. The cafeteria's food really is unappetizing. Maybe I will consider this my penance for my recent indiscretions. What do you mean? Opening the door, I noticed one less quiet figure than I expected. Lily. It's strange. Despite having known Lily for months, I can't help thinking back to... Yes, exactly. This was the very first moment when we first met. The very first moment we met. I can't help thinking back to the very first time I opened this door and saw her silently sitting in the sunlight. Just as she did then, she slowly opens her eyes, unmoving as they are, and calmly addresses me. Good morning, Hisao. It's afternoon, I think. Has Hanako been around? She skittered out of class without me even noticing. Lily cradles her cheek thoughtfully as I take a seat, my bag taking its place against the closest leg of the table and my unsatisfying meal neatly set out in front of me. She did appear, for a time. She said she had to study for the upcoming exams and left for the library. We find ourselves not entirely believing her words. Maybe she feels like a burden around these two now that she knows that they're in a relationship of a particular kind. Well, at least her intentions are in the right place. She is sweet, but she needn't go this far to let us have our space. I might talk to her about it sometime. Probably for the best. For while we quietly eat our meals, Lily elegantly nibbling her sandwiches and sipping her tea as I eat what tastes like a garden sandwich and dry dough. The atmosphere feels slightly strained, neither of us quite knowing what to say to each other now that our small talk has dried up. Eventually we both finish our food with no conversation forthcoming for quite some time. Eventually though, Lily's soft voice breaks the silence. A lot happened back there, didn't it? Again, silence. With both our minds on the same topic though, I think I have my feelings on that sorted out. I know everything happened in kind of a hurry, but I don't regret anything that happened there. Not one thing. Hisao? Slightly tense, I take her hands in mine, half to feel her, half to settle my own nerves. I stand by my words back there, Lily. I love you, and I won't leave you. I only wish for you to think the same. She silently reflects for a long time, which feels like an eternity. Her reverie comes to an end as she takes one hand from mine, placing it over them as she leans her body forwards and stands out of her chair. After a moment's hesitation, her face slightly pensive, her lips meet mine for a brief moment. Ah, my mind feels as if it's briefly stopped at that moment, barely registering Lily sitting back in her chair and smiling back at me with ever so slightly reddened cheeks. Ah. Hearing that makes me very happy, Hisao. I will be glad to stay with you. Maybe it would be good to slow things down a bit compared to before. We still have school after all, and our exams. She gives a mischievous giggle which proves to be contagious. That might be a good idea indeed. Do you think you'll fare well in the exams? There's only one day until they arrive, as you say. I probably should have studied more, but I think I've got a good enough head to manage. That said, I had to bat off Misha and Shizney. Is your class as worried about the exams as mine? She lets out an exasperated sigh, all but confirming it. I'm thankful for the atmosphere becoming a bit lighter. I think so. I've already been asked for help by 2 of my classmates, and there'll no doubt be more. Yep, when there's 1, there's 15. They'll be back, and in greater numbers. Think of it as your first training in being a teacher, maybe. That's probably a good way to think of it. On that note, How are you faring your English studies? I remember it was far from your strongest subject, and the few sentences you memorized to speak to my mother aren't likely to help. Damn right, Mark. You got me. If you don't mind, would you be able to possibly help in that regard? Please? It would be my pleasure to help you, Hisao, but in exchange... She lowers her eyebrows at me, her quittish nature tentatively coming into the foe. No problem at all. You'd probably be better off with some help in your studies. Oh, she beams a smile at me, one of the girlish victories that nearly makes me blush. I get a feeling she's aware of how to use her face to twist my judgment, so I should probably be more on guard. Here and now, though, a study group seems like an expedient way for both of us to shore up our more lacking skills. The school bell rings out, reminding us that time isn't going to stand still. Huh? Lunchtime's over already? It sure is easy to lose track of the time here. I thought at first it was a lot of time, but when you have a lot to talk about, there obviously is that. This room's so far from the other clubs and activities, not much sound can reach us. That's probably most of the reason why. A place far from all the others, alone with just one person whom she loves. As Lee stands and collects her bag and cane, my thoughts are cast back to the time we spent in Hokkaido. Before I go, Akira and I are having a homecoming party in my room tomorrow. Will you be able to come? And back again. My schedule is free, so I should be able to make enough room in my study time to make it. Good to hear, Hisao. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back from Scotland. Once exams are over, we should have some more time to ourselves. Holidays start soon after, too. We could start the holidays with Tanabata then, just as we promised at the school festival. She brings her hand to her cheek and laughs slightly nervously, recalling the event as I silently thank myself for managing to remember. It seems odd to see her react in such a way, though it's not like I never saw her embarrassed before. Indeed, there's a unique charm to Lilly's smile in comparison to any other. There's a lot of genuineness when it comes to Lilly. I better be going. Farewell, Hisao. Bye. Whether it's out of habit or just a stubborn desire for one small fragment of normality, I hold my hand up in farewell just as I always do. At least I'm consciously aware that I'm doing it now. I think I'm beginning to see a bigger picture than I ever have before. Not only with Lilly, but also my life ahead. Think forward. The chains of my past are finally breaking. Walking up the now slightly more familiar corridor of the girls' dormitories, I can hear the faint sound of laughter coming from up ahead. Although it doesn't take long to identify the source as Lilly's room, though the deep timbre of the female voice unmistakably belongs not to her but to her sister. I rap my knuckles on the door with the usual 3 light taps, my hand barely retreating as the door swings open. Hey, Hisao. Hello. Hey, hello, Lilly. Oh dear, looks like we just ignored her. What? Anyways, Hanako looks up tentatively, her hands buried in her oversized pink nightgown. From her side, Lilly turns sideways towards the direction of my voice and smiles. It would be a flagrant lie to say I dislike the sight of her in those pajamas. I catch Akira giving me a sidelong look with a knowing grin, to which I reply with a sharp glare. She takes a hint, shrugs and walks back to the low table in the center of the room. As I go to join her, Lilly gives me a nod of greeting and starts pouring me a cup of tea. It's nice to see you again, Hanako. You've been getting around recently. Lilly wears a look of concentration as the light brown liquid, carefully measured by her fingers always, flows from the teapot into the cup. It seems Hanako has taken up helping one of the people in your class with the newspaper club. Naomi, I think. Really? Hanako gives an affirmative nod. Even though I spend about 2 months in the class, I still have trouble remembering the names of those students I rarely talk with. It takes me a few mental contortions to connect the name with a face, but I eventually remember the girl that sits beside Hanako at the back of the class. Naomi anyway, a fairly average looking girl except for her bleached blonde hair. Given her upbeat and straightforward personality, Naomi may have seen an opening to poach Hanako for her club when she inquired about joining one. Either way, it's nice to see Hanako broadening her horizons. I wonder if this is what Hanako would want to do when she's older, something newspaper related. Not like delivering newspapers, but more like creating them. When I first met her, the idea of her joining a club with anyone but Lilly would have seemed utterly laughable. I would rather call it impossible, or improbable. That explains how busy you've been. Enjoying it? It's really interesting. As always, Hanako's far from being talkative. Some things never change, and it seems that Hanako's personality is one of them. She'll likely always be one to shy away from being overly social. And warned by the sound of crockery against the table as Lilly gently places my drink in front of me, I thank her and take a long sip. Hanako and I are tending to their own, and Akira is quaffing a mug of strong-smelling black coffee. "I'll have one of those, please." "You're lucky blank, Hisao. What do you mean? Huh?" I can't help grimacing at her teasing smile still visible on the edges of the mug pressed to her lips. Seeing my sister in her pajamas, there's a lot of men out there who'd like to be where you are. Shut up, you. I've seen a lot more of it. Yeah, don't. I was about to finish that sentence. Akira. Hey, I'm just teasing. She leans over to me as much as she can, whispering with a sly grin written on her face. And Hanako too, you pup. Hey, it was her idea. We both look over to her. Her face turned to the ground, her hands fidgeting in the lap of a nightgown. If it's Hisao, I don't mind. This could be bad. I know Hanako's altogether too innocent to bother reading too much into such a thing, but the expression Akira directs at me is positively stormy. Akira, please. It seems Lilly can sense Akira's sudden change in aura just as well as I, even without seeing it for herself. Akira slowly looks away from me, like an attack god leashed by its owner in the neck of time. I breathe a sigh of relief. I can't think of a more appropriate time to try and change topics than around now. If you don't mind me asking, Akira, what do you do for a living? I've never seen you out of that suit. Think about what to do with yourself after school's over, huh? I'm a lawyer, for most of the part. I work in the legal department of the Japanese branch of our family's company. The most boring possible answer, I suppose. Law's a pretty dry topic to most people. I haven't got a counter-argument for that. Kinda. Or, you're not supposed to agree, but you did say it was kind of boring. Lee gives an amused giggle while holding her teacup and saucer, Hanako quickly joining her. This friendly atmosphere between everyone is something I'd missed while Lilly and Akira were on their trip. While the dealings I had with Hanako didn't help, I think just not having Lilly around changed the mood. It's nice to be back. I missed you, Hisao, and you too, Hanako. Same goes for the both of us. I'm guessing your classmates were happy to see you back? In a manner of speaking, yes. Akira's amused snort shows me she's well aware of Lilly's attitude towards such figures of speech. I imagine she'd have to be, given how long they've been together. Did you have fun in Scotland? For a moment I wonder why she's asking. It has been quite a while since they came back, but then I remember everything that happened. We've simply not had time to look back, with what the exams now, Hokkaido trip. Lilly's face goes distant for a moment, and the fact that Akira's first reaction is to look over her sister doesn't escape me. Nevertheless, she quickly collects herself. It was nice. We hadn't met our family in such a long time, so it was a wonderful reunion. Yeah, I guess that's right. Their house being beachside was the best part though. From a dismissive tone, I get the feeling Akira doesn't like their family as much as Lilly does. You only like that because you finally had time to play around. Just cause I'm the better swimmer. I don't take after the athletic side of the family, that's all. The more academical side, I imagine, Lilly. Well, you can take heart in the fact that you got the height genes at least. Yeah, Lilly is the tallest one. And the... Oh dear. Akira, that's not... Yeah, that's not even the right kind of thing to say around others. Though Lilly pretends to scold Akira, she does so with an unmistakable, slightly cheeky grin on her face. I doubt Akira really minds that. Judging from her nonchalant expression, while I don't either, Haneka's looking down and blushing furiously beside me. The sisters' antics aside, their parents really do lead a bogus lifestyle. Yeah, I think when it comes to situations around people constantly talking about their parents, and then when it comes to Hanako, it's like, well, I keep talking about something that you don't have. Do you see what I'm talking about, which you don't have? Like that kind of thing. It's indirectly horrible. I say indirectly because the in part of directly is the more important part. It seems utterly divorced from the life that Lilly Akira had lived until now. I suppose practicality must have made the decision for them. To have come from such a wealthy and well-connected lineage only adds to the almost noble air Lilly seems to have, though it's a small wonder none of it seems to have rubbed off onto Akira. Yeah, Akira's quite casual. They really are as little alike as siblings could be. The only similarity seems to be their shared confidence, which can be both endearing and a headache sometimes. Most of the night continues with the same, with Hanako eventually leaving the Satu sisters and me to ourselves as she heads back to her dorm room for a rest. I get the feeling that Akira's plotting something, like, I don't know, leaving us to it, but not leaving us to it too soon, so curfew hours kick in. For a while, only the barely audible sound of Lilly's teacup and saucer can occasionally be heard as she slowly drinks. The silence is strained as Lilly and I wait for the elephant in the room to be addressed. So... Lilly dutifully puts her cup down and giving her sister her undivided attention. With Lilly and me on one side of the low table and Akira on the other, this almost feels like a judge passing down a verdict. I hear that you two are going out now. I glance sideways at Lilly to confirm her as the source of Akira's knowledge. She gives a gentle nod to Akira, which I mirror in affirmation. Decide this is the proper time and place to do so, and Akira being the closest figure to a parent Lilly's had for much of her life, I bow deeply with my hands on the floor before me and my head very nearly the same. I'll take good care of your sister, Akira, I promise you. See? He's a lovely young gentleman. She must have heard my voice coming from a lower position than usual. As I bring myself back up, my eyes tensively looking to Akira from under my brow. To tell the truth, I very much doubt my suited judge will raise any objections. She's very definitely the type to make her disapproval with others well known. Yeah, she's not the shy one for her disapprovalness of something. Something that lends her a measure of respect in my eyes. The old-fashioned kind, huh? Well, he's the kind of person I guess you'd go for. I don't have a problem with it, and I wish you two the best. Even if I didn't like it, I couldn't really do anything anyway. What do you mean you don't like it? I offer a nod of appreciation to her as Lilly gives a small sigh of relief, likely more out of duty than any actual belief Akira might have had any problems with us being together. I do wonder, though, how is the rest of the family taking it? Particularly the part residing at Yamako. Have you told her? Smiles turn to grimaces as Akira grins downright evilly. Those closest know how to twist the knife best after all. Putting up with it may be the best term for the situation. Don't you agree, Hisao? Yeah, that sounds about right. At least she's been reasonable about it. Good to hear. That girl can be a handful at the best of times. We sent a few messages back and forth during and just after the trip, and she was already busting my chops for seeing my boyfriend when we came back. After leaving Hideaki for so long, she really does care for the little guy. I cast my mind back to Shizune's odd reaction after telling her about our relationship, but decided to bring it up. It's no doubt simply born of their mutual antipathy, and Akira's comments only back that up. Well then, that's settled. Gotta get to work early tomorrow, so I better be off. She raised from the table with a grunt. Her hand on her knee to push herself up. I just noticed Akira's eyes lingering on Lilly for a couple of seconds before turning away as she begins to take a leave. After she walks out of the door, she stops and looks up thoughtfully before turning to us one last time. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you. Use protection... Akira, shut up! Just shut up. Dear, I gag violently on the tea in my mouth. Contrary to my own, Lilly's composure holds perfectly. She seems entirely unfazed. I'm kind of impressed. We are, don't worry. Atta girl, see yas. I think that's another reason why Akira left early. And with that, she turns and strides away, a hand held high as she disappears into the darkened hallway, closing the door behind her. The most reaction I can muster was flopping forwards onto the table, completely drained of energy and truly exhausted by her. Lilly's ability to hold her own against that suited devil was something I admire. She really is incredibly blunt. I don't think I'll ever be able to keep up with your sister's energy. As I feel Lilly's soft hand give me the wrist on my own, I roll my head to the side to see her gently smile. For a long time we simply sit beside each other silently. Given her unquestionably unusual height, she is pretty much exactly as tall as I am. Probably a couple of centimeters higher if anything. Like this, she appears even taller. The feeling of her pale, soft hand against mine is a pleasant one, as is the sight of the thin, slicking pajamas she wears, showing her curves and collarbone. You do get on well though, even if you do say that. I guess, you know, you two are a lot more alike than I first thought when I met you. Then it's a good thing I quickly stopped you from going after her, isn't it? We barely know her, and you think that, well, because I know you, I will just latch onto your sister instead. That's not how these... Though she jokes about it, my assessment of my inability to keep up with Akira, either physically or mentally, was quite in earnest. Lilly's slow pace and ladylike, almost motherly nature is perhaps a single thing that helped me most in my first weeks at Yamako. Come to think of it. Wait. Since when were we using protection? As I give a curious look to my side, Lilly's cheeks puff out as she huffs at me. Unlike you, I remembered, the packet is in the cupboard next to the sink. So I'm not the only one that takes the... Yeah, in hindsight, I feel rather thoughtless for not remembering at all and leaving it to Lilly. Looking over to the cupboard she mentions, I notice again the knee-high pills of books around us that were here the other times I visited. For the most part, they're lined up against the wall to give a little more room around the table. Why don't you get a bookshelf for your books? There's lots to see books just piled around, especially given that your room looks so neat and orderly otherwise. They're easier to find this way. I know exactly which pile each book is in. Wouldn't you still know how? Sorry, wouldn't you still know that after putting each set on a different shelf? That may be, but... So she's not immune to bouts of laziness after all. You have so many of them! It's kind of a shame we can't share our book sets despite both of us reading so much. She gives a short giggle. Come to think of it, why do you order your books through Yuko? I imagine there'd be plenty of sites you could order books in Braille from, especially in English. Braille. There are a lot of text-to-speech programs too. She turns her head slightly away from me, which strikes as somewhat surprising. I'm just not all that good with computers. I'm alright with typewriters and braillers, but that's about it. Her tone almost makes me chuckle. She's a prideful person, so admitting something like that must be difficult. So Lilly's the low-tech kind of person, given her old-fashioned personality, is not really a stunning surprise. I wouldn't worry about it. A lot of people aren't really that good with them, so it's not that unusual. That unusual. Now she's even more depressed. I feel like I'm twisting the knife rather than healing her wounds. With a bit of squirming, I shuffle my way closer, tentatively putting one hand around her waist. I was not really used to this kind of physical affection, but Lee seems to like it. Aww. Lily smiles. She turns to face me, a kiss being the reward for giving in to her. She draws me in, brushing my upper lip with hers before pressing against both. This way even one of my senses is filled with her, the barely perceptible scent of her hair, her taste is okay, the tenderness of her lips, the total silence apart from her favorite. We may have kissed before, but even if this is more of a kiss of simple affection than anything, it's still a new and pleasant sensation. Judging from her vivid blush as she pulls back, it's obvious she feels the same as I do, even if we're entirely alone. It still feels a little embarrassing to open up to each other this much. If we take everything day by day, I think that would be the best. Small steps, right? Yeah, just small steps. We have plenty of time to be together, even after the school year is over. As long as we move together, I think everything will work out okay. Neither of us is going anywhere soon after all. For now, I'm just thankful for a small moment in time we could spend together. I thought we were going to crank it out again. I stand unmoving in front of the door to the nurse's office for what feels like at least a dozen minutes. It's not like I ever entered the small beige room before, nor is it because of any feeling of childlike anxiety over the visit. Maybe it's because the nurse's office is akin to a confessional, an admission that my body is flawed, the knowledge that such a fact is kept entirely confidential between the nurse and me hardly lessens the feeling. Remembering that the bell to signal the end of the lunch break will sound soon, I give a sign and open the door. The body will stay with me just this while longer. Well now, if it isn't Nakai, good to see you. Or bad, I guess, considering that I'm a nurse. He gives a small laugh. Amused at his little joke, I find his humour lacking and somewhat off. But the fact he can make light of such a situation is perhaps comforting, or at least distracting. His brief episode of entertainment over, he claps his hands together and gets down to business. I take a seat as he gestures for me to do so. I wish the classrooms had seats this comfortable. I can feel my mind wandering as my eyes quickly scan the room, distracted by all the small changes since I last came. Alrighty, so what brings you here? I haven't seen you often, so I assume your health has been good so far? Well, mostly. I see. His smile drops as I trail off. I feel slightly guilty about it. It's these moments where I can't rationally call myself normal that make me so reluctant to see the nurse. They're an admission that I'm different from everyone else. While I was on a trip during the long weekend, I had a few problems with my heart. He hums very seriously and nods as he does so, urging me to go on. I think it was as I was walking a fairly long distance. I think the right term for it was a heart flutter. I suddenly went weak at the knees and felt almost like I was having a small heart attack, but it passed in about half a minute. Even afterward though, I felt pretty fatigued and nauseous. Not good at all. That was how many days ago exactly? Did you do anything unusual aside from exerting yourself before the episode? Were you taking medication properly? The nurse switches from awkward jokester to serious health professional mode, rattling off questions, making notes, and calling up stuff on his computer. I'll tell him about forgetting to take my pills that morning and the preceding evening. It was a stupid thing to do, but I can't change anything about it now, except answer honestly and bite the bullet. His seriousness evolves into a frown, and the talk evolves into an instant checkup. I feel buttoning up my shirt again, getting motion to take a seat in front of the nurse. Is this the first heart problem you've had since coming to Yumako? I've had short pains in my chest before, just a couple of times, but they were more discomfort than anything like this, and also adding to the 1 or 2 times that Emmy crashed into our chest. He leans back in his chair, briefly resembling a white-coated vat as he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Moving his lips from side to side to show he's thinking, his non-existent mustache wiggling, he eventually comes to a conclusion. Well, you survived it. That's always on the plus side. I blink at this one, then notice the nurse wearing his "got you" face. It's actually somewhat reassuring. I don't think he would crack jokes if things were really serious, so I get silence and take my lumps. I'll have a talk with your doctor. but right now I suspect it's simply due to physical exertion. Have you been keeping up with regular light exercise like I directed you to? I make sure to walk a reasonable amount every day. It's usually enough to work up a bit of a sweat, but then again I'm not really as fit as I used to be. That should be enough then. The main thing to keep in mind is to do regular low stress exercise, not short bursts of sprinting and such, like I don't know what we would do with Emmy otherwise if it was her route. I understand, since leaving the hospital I've been a lot more focused on my studies, partly to take my mind off of not being able to do more physical things. It's good to hear you're coping well. Sudden lifestyle change can be hard at the best of times, so I'm pleased to hear that you sound like you have everything in order. Almost everything, that is. Hard. Nevertheless, I want to keep a close eye on you for a while, just for observation's sake, just to make sure things aren't going downhill. You understand? There's something I really didn't want to hear since coming to Yamako. All I've wanted to do is live as normal a life as possible. Observation was one of those words I came to hate most during my hospital stay. For so long I felt as if I could have just walked straight out of the hospital doors, if not for that observation the doctors wanted so dearly. Sure, should I come in more often? He checks the calendar next to his computer, which seems to inflict on him a nasty case of furrowed brow. He spins back towards me after that. The summer holidays are a bit of a pain, considering the timing. I'll check with your doctor to try and get a better handle on the situation and see how he wants to proceed, but I think you should just take things slowly and carefully for now. What you're describing doesn't immediately sound like a reoccurring event, but it won't hurt to slow down a bit for a while just to make sure. What should I do for today? He looks over my shoulder at a clock hanging over the door. I'd never have noticed it if I hadn't followed his gaze. It's nearly time for school to be over, so you may as well just leave early. He gives me a sly wink, making sure that I understand he's doing me a favour. Well, nurse's orders. Thanks. That's what I'm here for after all. I know you might not want to hear this, but you can't ignore your condition. Don't hesitate to see me if you have any further problems. If you just have anything you want to ask. Bye. He spins around and gets back to typing on the computer in front of him. I suppose I'll just read before waiting for Lilly by the gate, considering I don't have much else to do. Even if as I leave, his words echo in my mind. My condition isn't something as limiting as many of the others here in Yamako, and I don't want to burden Lilly with thinking about it. But the thing is, if you want to enter a relationship with Lilly of that kind, you have to be more honest around with her. It's not a matter of fact of her worrying about you. It's because of you worry about a person that you love because you care about them. If I just live life normally and avoid any short, sharp shocks, I should be okay. I won't let my condition rule me. Lilly comes into view soon after the bells heralding the end of the school day ring out. She says farewell to a number of her classmates headed in the other direction, before beginning her weekly trip to the convenience store. Afternoon, Lilly. The immediately warm smile relaxed to me as she assumes upon noticing my presence are unexpectedly welcome. Hello, Hisao. Good afternoon to you too. She hesitates for a second, but eventually deigns to tilt her head forward and close her eyes. My lips meet hers with a measure of slight trepidation before we move off hand in hand. The fact we're so close in height is somewhat useful at times, there being no need for either of us to turn our head upwards nor downwards in order to meet the others. It doesn't take much time to leave the noise of the other students far behind us, the tapping of Lilly's cane in her free hand, the only sound to be heard. Silence, blissful silence, is all that greets us while we slowly walk in the setting sun's light. I think I'm coming to really like this town. The huge, green, hilly expanse, the trees everywhere, the somewhat rustic little buildings. So you've come to appreciate the tranquility of it as well? I think so. I came from a metropolitan city near Tokyo, so the quiet of this town really alienated me when I first arrived. After a while it became really nice though. I think I prefer it to the hustle and bustle of my home city now. Well, I prefer the quiet of such a rural town even when I first arrived. I suppose I had the advantage of growing up in a quiet area before I came. Hanaka said the surroundings are very pretty too. Lily may say such a thing quite easily, but each time she mentions how others describe sights around her as beautiful or pretty, I feel a little put off. I notice her expression becoming one of anticipation for some question or another. She always had a good sense of when somebody's not saying something that's on their mind, so I may as well speak up. I was kind of wondering, how to put this. Do you ever regret that you can't see what things look like for yourself? It's just something I've been thinking about. She thinks carefully for a time. Do you ever regret that you can't hear people whispering on the other side of a room? I can only speak for myself, but the fact that I can't see is the only way I've experienced life. Just as I cannot do something you can, you can't do something that I'm capable of. The fact that the world is made for those who are sighted can be a pain sometimes, but there are many people that suffer much more than I because of the way the world is. That does make sense, but still, it just feels kind of bad to describe something that you can't experience to you. She turns to her quizzically, as if I just said something that makes very little sense at all. But I can experience it. You just said yourself that you like this area because of the way the surroundings are. I like this area for the very same reason. Thanks to the fact that this is a small rustic town surrounded by trees, it gives some peace and quiet away from the din at school and the bustle, not to mention the smells of the city. I suppose it would also be much like the home she shared with Akira as well. Her outlook on it seems pretty sensible, and I'm not surprised she's got a much better handle on her particular condition than I do on mine. Just like how her coming from a location somewhat similar to Yumako's surrounding let her become more acclimatized in a shorter time. Being born blind affected her stance, by her own admission. I should stop being so annoyed with myself over it, but I can't shake the feeling that I've depended on Lily far too much, given the circumstances most have had to deal with in Yumako. That makes a lot of sense. You're pretty good at explaining, as always. Come to think of it, where's Hanako anyway? She was with us for lunch. It seems she's busy studying. The exams are far from over, and she said she wants to do better this year than the last. While I admire her work ethic, she's really been trying to give us a lot of room alone recently. She's that type of person, I think, the kind that puts others' needs above her own at every chance. She's a sweet girl, even though so much has hurt her in the past. I don't know. I feel like it's only now, when she's less close to me than ever, that she's truly finding herself. It was thanks to you that she began to become more confident. After all, not me. I take my hand from hers and gently place it on her head. The important thing is that you were there for her. I can't even imagine what she'd be like without having found someone like you. That much became obvious while you were in Scotland. We're also still friends, so we've just got to have faith in her. I think she'll become a good person. She's already a good person, and that much is thanks to you being there for her when she most needed it, just as you were there for me. It makes me feel a bit childish when you sound so wise. Well, I try. Are you doing anything on weekends by any chance? Nothing that comes to mind, why? Then how about a date on Sunday? It'd be something to do besides exam preparation. Counter my rapidly beating heart, she simply smiles and nods. That would be lovely. Where would you like to go? Her face suddenly changed to one of disapproval. You can't do that, Hisao. That's cheating. What do you mean? You mean that we should surprise you? Do what? A gentleman should never ask a lady where to have a date. Oh. Her smile quickly comes back, assuring me that she's far from serious. Don't worry about it. I'll think about where we could go. I'll leave it to you then. I promise to decide on the next date, though. With our plans for the weekend made, the rest of the walk down the hill continues in silence. The prospect of that lasting for any length of time, however, is shattered as I catch sight of a familiar figure waiting for us, her hand held high. Yo, Gamma Akira. Thank you, please come again. The change in temperature as I step outside from the convenience store sends a chill up my spine. It feels like summer's starting to wind down. Looking to my side, the same feeling seems to affect Lilly as well, though unlike me, she doesn't manage to hide the fact. So I didn't realise at first was how physically delicate she is, even compared to the likes of Hanako. If I had to describe her, I'd have to say that she reminds me of a China doll. Bump. Akira walks up behind her and gives her a couple of hard pats on her shoulder, much to Lily's consternation. For a moment she looks as envious of my status as an only child as I am of their close relationship. They talk between themselves for a few moments as I sort out my bags. Their voice is too low for me to catch, but eventually they break off as we begin to the walk back to school. Ah, it feels good to be out of that damned office. You kids don't know how good you have it out here. Kids? Heh, you two then. Kids grow up so fast nowadays. You're not old enough to say that. I don't know. Being around Hideaki makes me feel damned old. He's so precautious he reminds me of you when you were younger. He's a nice boy. It would be a shame if Shizney comes to have too much of an influence on him. Akira gives an amused snort at her sister's antipathy. She really doesn't seem to regard it as anything to make a serious fuss about, treating it more like a childhood spat. She looks over to me, apparently only just remembered I'm here, and gives a small grin as she reaches towards her back pocket. What is it? Just a sec, let me dig it out. After quite some difficulty, she manages to retrieve her black leather wallet from her back pocket, quickly fishing out what looks like to be a folded square of paper. With Lily all but unaware of what's happening, Akira folds the scrap and hands it to me. Wow. An old photo of what looks to be a younger Lily and Shizney operating a noodle stall with some other girl in the background. She looks vaguely familiar, but I can't quite pinpoint why. What is it, Akira? I think you know. Lily mulls this over for a few moments before realization dawns on her. Akira, you really needn't. It's fine, isn't it? Besides, it's like the only photo I have of you two since you entered Yamako, where you're not at each other's throats. I look back down to the photo in my hand. It does seem strange to see Lily and Shizney working together so diligently without any sign of animosity. If the photos of them during Yamako's festival, that means it must have been taken 1 or 2 years ago. In other words, the time when they were both in the student council together. Who's the girl in the back? She looks kind of familiar. Heh, I knew you would recognize her. It's Misha before she went and dyed her hair pink. That's Misha? No way. It feels extremely strange to see Misha without her so very distinctive hairstyle. Judging from Akira's tone, she doesn't take favourably to Misha's idea of fashion. I suppose that fact just accentuates how odd the situation looks. To think they were so friendly in the past, I wish I could just do something to mend their relationship. It's not down to you, it's down to those two. You're being very quiet, Hisao. It just feels kinda strange to see you all so friendly like this. Lily moves to say something but stops herself in the end. This isn't a matter for me, it's between Shizney and me and nobody else. Things change, unfortunately. I hand the photo back to Akira, who sighs as she folds it up and slides it back into her wallet. A little memory, quietly hidden away, to be pulled out again some time later. Yeah, that they do. Initially, I think Akira's reaction to be simply in response to the situation between Lily and Shizney, but she looks oddly glum compared to what I expected. Lily's expression is clouded as well. What's wrong? It's just that I'll be going to Scotland fairly soon. You're leaving for Scotland again? For a long moment, Akira looks surprised. It's an ill-fitting expression for her. After a glance at Lily, she turns back to me as she'd never done so. Yeah, in a couple of weeks, I'll be leaving for Infinite to work at the company's headquarters. It's a pretty big jump in corporate position, and it's not a chance that's going to come again. So Akira's going to leave Japan, or what seems to be a permanent basis. I can't help thinking that my assumption that we could all happily while away our days, having fun in this isolated world, is coming to an end. It's unsettling. I look at Lilly, mildly surprised that she hasn't told me such a thing despite usually being so forthcoming. She continues to walk with her face fixedly pointed ahead. I can't read her expression, nor can I even guess what's on her mind, which is discomforting given how it's usually easier for me to do both. It reminds me of the time when we met at the Shanghai, just before what could be called our first date. At the time, all I could do was comfort her without knowing the cause, and now feels no different. As we finally reach the school dormitories once again, there's a somewhat awkward silence. I don't think I'm the only one who feels it. See you tomorrow then, Lilly. Bye, Akira. Good night, Hisao. See ya. And with that, they walked to the female dormitories. Opening the door to the male dormitories, I stopped and looked back at them just moments before their figures disappeared behind the heavy wooden door. That was a strange moment when Akira said she was leaving. While that wasn't the first time when my thoughts regarding my new life had been called into question, it's perhaps the first time to do it quite so profoundly. I still don't know what to make of Akira's reaction, much less of Lilly's. The night's chill reminds me to get back to my room before I catch something. My bag's pulling down on my arms with seemingly redoubled weight. If nothing else, I have a date with her set up for the weekend. I just need to stop overthinking stuff to get on with things as they are. The exams are still ongoing after all, and with the trimester's end and the summer holidays beginning soon, there'll be plenty to keep me busy for a while. As I give a yawn and retreat inside, my thoughts turn to what Lilly would decide to set as the location of our weekend rendezvous. This is really fancy. I'm pretty sure this is about the last thing I had in mind when Lilly said she decided where to have our date. No man or woman is dressed in anything but their finest, their formality only matched by that of their surroundings. Rich red wallpaper adorns the walls as the city lights far below flicker and glow, combined with the ambient hum of quiet speech and the high-pitched clattering of cutlery and wine glasses. The mood is very formal, yet relaxed enough for me not to feel too uptight despite this being our first real date. Once we are seated, our waiter leaves to attend to others with a quick bow and after an appreciative nod from Lilly. Far from depending on my help, Lilly's managed to navigate herself around surprisingly easy so far despite the unfamiliar environment. A light brush here and there, and she's generally quite daft at orienting herself as needed. And my eyes looked to Lilly's. I could tell from her face that she's listening to her surroundings just as hard as I'm looking. Though truth be told, my eyes are lingering on her each time. They sweep across the room. The red cheongazam she's wearing accentuates her figure very well and shows off her legs. Even her hair is done up, and the scent of pure perfume is just noticeable, for goodness sakes. While my black suit may be a rental, I managed to select an appropriate one. It feels surprisingly comfortable considering I've so rarely worn one, and fits the setting just as well as Lilly's attire. I guess this is a new experience for both of us then. She turns somewhat sheepish. I've never come to a place such as this before, no. One hell of a first date, that's for sure. It's going to be pretty hard for me to top this. A small giggle. Even now, our nervousness is dissipating. Her hands skate along the center of the table until it touches the menu, which she takes in both hands and brings to her face. Hisao? As she lowers the beige, laminated sheet just below her eyes, I can see another sheepish look. I doubt asking the waiter for a menu in Braille would be productive. Shall we read the menu for you? I can read it out for you, no problem. I take mine and give it a quick read, my small grin fluttering. Perhaps there is... What's wrong? There are quite a few items on here, and I'm not completely sure how to pronounce a couple of them. One fine cuisine after another is listed. Most may be in Japanese, but a few are in English and French. I guess it's to be expected, but I have no idea what's in some of these. Oh, this one I recognise. Wait, hang on. You can cook that? A small giggle of amusement comes from behind the paper. I'm sure it's snails. Well, I could read them all out, but it would take a few hours. Is there anything with some kind of fish in it? Let's see. No. Are those poisonous? What's on the menu? No. Eat that stuff? No. There we go. A tuna salad seems to be a good bet. From a picture, it looks like it'd be pretty filling as well. That seems to be a reasonably safe option. Let's order 2 then. I'm pretty sure a couple of these dishes are from poisonous animals. I have another deadly run-into it now. Lily maintains a smile, but there's a distinct lack of laughter. Black humour mustn't be her cup of tea. But to be honest, I didn't find it exceedingly funny either. There are certainly quite a few interesting smells wafting about. The smell is the same as true of the sights, I assume. I've never been anywhere quite like this. A fancy Japanese tea house on occasion or two, but never anything this lavish nor European in styling. Before another word can be said, a portly waiter in a distressingly tight vest appears at our table to take our orders. Plum sir, tuna saladre necklace, please, 2. I hope I didn't mess up the pronunciation of that too badly. Even if I did, he doesn't show it. And may I have a glass of chardonnay, please, Hisao? Oh, the same. As the waiter nods and leaves, I suddenly realise what I said by absent-mindedly mimicking Lily's answer. I'll regret it pretty quickly. Alcohol. Only a bit. This girl has an odd propensity to getting hooked on things, I swear. Surprising that he didn't ask for identification. We're suited up. Then again, I guess we both do look mature for our age. I'll have to take your word for it. I'll add that this isn't what I'd call the type of place to ask such things, but exactly. Good point. We both relaxed a little into our seats, trying to take our minds off the choking formality of the surroundings. As soon as we do, the same waiter reappears at our table with 2 empty glasses and a bottle, the contents of which are quickly and professionally poured into the former. We both nod politely as he leaves. Lee takes her glass and gently moving it from side to side. The liquid inside glistens as it moves around in the glass, and I have to admit it makes me a little less regretful for ordering the same. I guess it must take effort to judge how the liquid inside is acting, based only on its center of balance. Maybe it's like her origami, taking every little chance to practice her dexterity. I guess I'm not surprised that you know about a place like this. Those who have money would, I suppose. Yeah, this reminds me of just how completely different our upbringings were. In Yamako, it's easy to forget about social and economic disparity between students all wearing the same uniforms, living in the same dormitories. Well, Akira was one to tell me of it. She comes here before, apparently. So that's what they were conspiring about on Friday. And you chastise me for cheating? That's not cheating. It's simply making use of personal contacts. If you say so. Still, I get the feeling that you're more familiar with this kind of restaurant than I am. She pauses a moment, a wistful look on her face, before softly smiling. The compliment seems to brighten her mood. You can thank my former school for that. If I were to appear on any list, they'd be gravely disappointed. She had mentioned her previous schooling before, but now I'm kind of curious. She seems to think a lot about her past, but I don't seem like any problem in asking. What was that like? It was prestigious, all girls and Catholic. These facts made my parents choose it for me. Many wealthy families see their daughters there. For how it sounds, life there must have been pretty strict. I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, but you're quite right, it was very strict. Thankfully, I managed to adapt well enough and make a number of friends. Unfortunately, the same can't be said of my sister. She found the atmosphere and religious aspects suffocating, and ended up leaving for a job as soon as she was able to. She gave a small, self-deprecating chuckle. I shouldn't complain about it though. Not many have the chance to go to such a school. Do you resent your parents for sending you there, then leaving? She gently shakes her head. My family is highly patriarchal. My father, business always on his mind, was entirely lost as to what to do with me. In the end, he made the right decision that my education was of higher priority than staying with the family. He simply did what he thought was best. To say such things so easily, what an unbelievable girl. That said, I'm a little surprised she doesn't think her blindness played any part at all, though maybe I'm being too harsh on her family. You're too kind-hearted, you know that. Most would hate their parents for something like that. Well, some do. Oblivious to my raised eyebrows, she takes a sip from her glass. The wine slips down effortlessly, her fondness for it evidently helping her deal with the flavour of alcohol. I can't say the same goes for me. What of yourself? What was your schooling like? Mine, let's see. It was a fairly normal public school, I suppose, maybe a bit busier than the norm. I did quite well in class and played in the soccer club. So I am an only child and my parents both worked a lot. I wasted most of my free time and money at the arcade with my 3 friends. No matter how much I played though, I never did manage to beat Mai at any of those machines. Even Takani and Shin lost to her whenever they tried. Then I'd be left trying to be a responsible adult when Shin and Mai fought. Again. Just the 4 of us, aimlessly enjoying our childhood. Those were some pretty silly times. I catch myself as I realise I'm starting to zone out, the days of my old school disappearing to the night sky and bright city lights outside the window. Lilly's face is an odd mixture of curiosity and sympathy. Given her strict schooling, I suppose something like this would seem an interesting contrast to the only life she's known. It sounds like your previous school was a lot of fun. I'm not really sure how much of it is nostalgia, but there are some nice memories. That's in the past, though. I can't go back there now, but through my accident I found a new life I'd never had imagined leading. The peace and calm of Yumako, a direction for my future in science, the friendship of Shizune, Misha and Hanako, and most of all you. Aww. She gives a deep, genuine smile as she moves her hands towards me. Her fingers just slightly searching out my face before softly caressing my cheek. There's a new light to this one that makes it look different from the first time Lilly touched Hisao's face. Her hand reluctantly retreats after a second of warm silence as we notice the waiter arriving with our meals. Lee does a daft job of covering her condition, except for the fact that her nod to him is slightly misaligned due to his silence. She really seems to work hard at appearing as normal as possible in public. While I noticed it long ago, I still can't quite gauge whether it's a want to not be treated differently, a slight sense of vanity, or some mixture of both. I think it's the former. And the dish served lines up to the sad name, and the portions pleasantly large. With sliced eggs and tomato, it looks very enticing indeed. Lee takes a knife in one hand and fork in the other, quickly getting to work on the dish as I do. It's later than when we usually have dinner, so we're both eager to dig in. My cautious skewering of leaves and vaguely meat-like squares with my fork is matched by Lilly's silent and measured prodding and chewing. Indeed it would be that. An occasional tap around the sides of a piece of the food to work out its edges is the only giveaway to her lack of sight. I'm done with my meal in little time, Lilly taking the last few bites as I sit observing her. Finished, Hisao? Yeah, it was pretty nice. That much is very true. I never thought a simple salad could be so tasty and filling, but then again, I suppose that's why it costs so much to eat here. Content with my appraisal and evidently agreeing, Lilly gives a small nod. You know, given that you're part foreign, exotic looking and quite pretty, I'm surprised that nobody's ever confessed to you before. You're assuming nobody did? The simple statement takes me off guard. I shouldn't be surprised given I was complimenting her just moments before. Really? I received several confessions, both in this school and my previous one. Adolescence is a funny time. She's kind of talking as if she's above it herself. Huh? How easy you say such a thing? Lily looks surprised for a moment before a playful smirk covers her face. Is that jealousy? What? No, it isn't. You're a bad liar, Hisao. You should take that into account. Then again, I do appreciate how sincere you are, even if you don't intend to be sometimes. I think your honesty will always serve you well when dealing with others. I clear my throat in mock disapproval of this whole business and try to steer the conversation elsewhere. To tell the truth though, I do prefer solitude to being surrounded by others. I don't think I can maintain a social circle like you do. She contemplates this for a moment. I don't think that's true either. I've seen how gentle and caring you are around Hanako, and you get on marvellously well with others, even those whom you hardly know. I think you're quite adept at social situations. But on that note, what are your confessions, Hisao? I'm sure someone like you must have had at least one admirer. Iwanako. Oh dear, as I open my mouth to speak, I can feel my face turn slightly dour. At times like this, I secretly appreciate the fact that she can't see my expressions. Just one. Her name was Iwanako. It was when she confessed to me that I had my heart attack, there in the woods during winter. Lee finds herself speechless, not expecting for the topic to move into such an area. My condition has always been something of a concern for her, something that I strive to minimize despite my body's best efforts to the contrary. Afterwards, she invited me for a while when I was in the hospital. For weeks she came in and talked. It was usually some small talk or classroom gossip, but that was enough. But eventually, she just stopped coming. She was there every day, then every other day, then once a week, then finally, one day she just stopped visiting entirely. Did you ever see her again? Mention the letter or just drop the subject entirely? I think that's going to be something for the next time, folks, so definitely progressing through, but what would this make it out to be, for goodness sakes? So thank you all so much for watching, guys, and see you all in the next time of Katawa Shoujo. Thank you all so much for watching and take care of yourselves.